It has nothing to do with how successful your business is, right? That's one thing that I think makes me a little bit different. Leadership is someone that can look others in the eyes and without pride, but in humility say, follow my example.
Welcome to the Follow My Lead podcast, where we transfer stories and best practices of today's leaders to the leaders of tomorrow with your host, John Eads.
Welcome to Season 3, Episode 3 of the Follow My Lead podcast. Today, I'm joined by a guy that has accomplished more by age 31 than most people do in their lifetime. His name is Dale Partridge, and Dale is a professional blogger, author of a best-selling book, People Over Profit, keynote speaker, and now founder of Startup Camp, where he helps other people create the business and the life that they want. We covered a bunch of ground in the discussion, specifically what is leadership to Dale, why we should all strive for self-mastery, what he considers the 4 pillars of success to be, and how we can measure ourselves against those pillars. I couldn't be more excited that you've joined us to learn from Dale in our discussion. So without further ado, here's my interesting conversation with Dale Partridge. Just a quick housekeeping item. This podcast is brought to you by LearnLoft.com, an organization focused on helping the modern professional add value to their organization through leadership development programs and innovative learning technology. Well, Dale, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Super stoked to be having just a good conversation with you.
Well, for people that don't know Dale Partridge, I just came back from your Startup Camp conference. It made a huge impact on me personally. The message that you share online and with other entrepreneurs and young professionals is something that I think everybody should be following. So first, I want to start by saying thank you to you. You're just a great influence on a lot of young people.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, it's been a really cool journey to have just been called to really have an authority or a voice in I think the millennial generation's ear, and to try to remind people of what normal is, and to try to remind people of what healthy is. And nobody wants to be normal, but I say it's way worse to be common, right? So just helping people kind of regain those roots and reclaim that kind of morality that I think a lot of the culture's losing today. So stoked to have the conversation.
Yeah, and it felt like there was kind of a movement out there of just like-minded people that felt that sense of purpose and culture coming back to the professional world. So great stuff. But people that don't know you, tell the audience a little bit about your personal life, where you're from, married, kids, how you've gotten to be on this journey that you are now.
Yeah, so born and raised in Southern California, grew up thinking I was going to be a professional baseball player, busted my arm when I was 18 years old, dream just totally went to the trash. Started a fitness company because I thought that I would love to learn how how I broke. I wanted to kind of understand that, and created this first company when I was 18, did really well, sold that company, then started another company, and then I started a rock climbing gym, and then I started an in-conference company, and then I started a branding agency, and then I started an e-commerce company called Sevenly, and then I started Startup Camp. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I got married when I was 24. I have 2 kids. We want a big family, so we're hoping for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 kids. We're wild and crazy, and we live on 7 acres now, outside of town in the middle of Central Oregon, overlooking 4 glaciers from our backyard. And we got a miniature donkey. And we got 2 dogs, 2 cats that run around the backyard, 2 kids. Life's nuts. Now I'm at Startup Camp, which is a company I founded about 2 years ago, teaching people how to start their own business. And it's an online curriculum that just walks people step by step through that process. We have about a little over 1,000 students currently enrolled right now, and a podcast just like you that's got about 100,000 people that listen to it every month, and author also of a Wall Street Journal best-selling book called People Over Profit. So done a lot of things in my 31 years of life.
Does that ever what you've been able to personally accomplish at 31, right? I mean, that's, to a lot of people listening, that feels like a lot, right? Does it feel like a lot to you?
It does feel like a lot. For me, okay, so this is a good lesson here. I gave up my 20s so that I could have my like a really awesome 30s and 40s and 50s. And that's just something that I kind of really, cognitively did. I was really intentional about that. I knew that I was okay with giving up my 20s so that I could have a really awesome. My opinion and the questions that I've always asked people, one thing rang true is that people go, your 30s are like really fun years. It's the years that you're like building family and you're like having children and so I just anticipated that. A lot of people think that my life is an accident, but it was incredibly intentional.
What are some of those things? What are some of those things that you did in your 20s? Does anything come to mind where, was it not going out? Was it working long hours? What were some of the things that you intentionally did?
Yeah, I made really intentional plans. I didn't date the wrong girls. I worked a lot. And I got married at 24, so I was still in my 20s. But I realized that goals overlapped. So like I wanted everything. Everything was very complicated, but it kind of made sense in my head. I didn't travel a lot. I just wasn't spending a lot of money. I saved a lot of money. I didn't have the best finances in the beginning, but for the last 6 or 7 years, I've been really good with my money. I made good decisions early on. I sought out tons of counsel, just like incredible mentors, and read a lot of books. I did so much reading. I don't read that much right now. I mean, there's those seasons that I go into reading a ton, but in my 20s, man, I read 200 and something, maybe 300 books,
you were just like a sponge. I'm in.
Yeah. It was the season of learning. This is the season of doing. I feel like, my 40s are going to be the seasons of really teaching. And then the 50s will probably be the seasons of guiding. Right. So I just really feel like there's some sort of process that's going on in my life. And, and my 30s are great now. I mean, I really love it. We have a lot of freedom. We have a lot of financial freedom. And we can enjoy it instead of struggling when I have a lot of peers that are in that space right now, for sure.
Yeah. Well, what is you've been through a lot. You now are kind of in this 30s peak that you're talking about, where you've set up for your 30s. In your 20s, you led people at Sevenly. You managed people. You now lead people in your own company at Startup Camp. What does leadership mean to Dale Partridge?
It has nothing to do with how successful your business is, right? That's one thing that I think makes me a little bit different. Leadership is someone that can look others in the eyes and without pride, but in humility say, follow my example. And meaning that they're so confident in the fact that they are doing whatever well. For me, I look at people and I go, I don't want to follow the most successful person that nobody likes. I don't want to follow the wealthiest person that nobody likes. I don't want to be the richest guy in the graveyard. I don't want to be the unhealthiest wealthy person that's like around. So for me, I look at someone that I'll give you a story, right? So there's two people. I know these two people. I'm not going to tell you who these two people are. One guy's 35 years old. He's a millionaire. Travels everywhere. From the outside looking in, his life looks amazing. And he's got a huge social media following and just a good guy. I really like the guy. But his life, it feels very like shallow and not that much depth. And I feel like he's missing out on a lot of the meaningful things in life. Well, that's just my perspective. The reason I say that is because I know he wants to be married. I know he wants to have a family, but he doesn't. And so there's things like that I look at. So I go, okay, well, there's this one guy. That's his story and his journey. Then there's another guy who's 50 years old, and he's got 11 children. And he's got 40 acres on some land, and he's got a radiant wife and a beautiful marriage and just a great relationship with his kids. And he's got a company that's incredibly successful, and he's also a multimillionaire. And his employees love him and care for him. He's on the board of multiple businesses. And I'm like, I look at this guy and I go, wow, there's something different about this guy's maturity level. Like, to be able to have all that same stuff that the other guy has, but also have a huge family to take care of that actually, they're not in the middle of a divorce. His kids aren't on drugs. Like, to be able to have done all that, there's a level of mastery, like of self-mastery, that is really impressive. And the same thing for women, right? Like you look at like, these moms. I'm a mom of 5, and everything's together, and you're like, how did you do that? It's just a personal mastery that's just like, wow. Every element of your life is organized. It's set up, and it's healthy, and it's not about you. It's the loss of selfishness. It's all about others. And so I look at leadership and I go, wow, okay, look at this guy's finances are in order. He's healthy. Like the guy runs marathons, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, how does this guy have time for this life, And it's this idea of having it all. I look at people who they have it all. They have good reputation. They have good friendships. Their family's strong. Those are the things that I look at as metrics of success. I don't care if you're a millionaire. If I was single and 31 years old and spent the last 12 years of my life since I was 18 just hustling and caring about nobody but myself, sure, I'd have a $20 million company also. That's like the easiest thing you can do in the world, right? Is be single, care about myself, work 80 hours a week, and not become a millionaire. Well, that means that something's wrong. Like you're just not getting it, because it's not difficult to make that kind of money if you're like doing something for 12 years straight, right? So You either have a lack of discipline or a lack of focus or whatever. So yeah, those are the things that I look for differently than someone else. It's kind of like what I would say is like a next level of leadership. And
it's a brilliant example, but the question I've always kind of struggled with, Dale, is that, a mentor of mine told me this story one time about how his best friend in the world, who he knew like that he thought he knew like the back of his hand, everything on the outside looked amazing, got a call one day at his house, 7 p.m., about to sit down to dinner with his family. He says, I really need to get together right now. Like right now. I need you. He's like, all right, I'll be right there. And they sit down. He goes, there's something I got to tell you. I've been, talking to girls online. My wife found out about it. I haven't cheated on her, but I've been holding this back for so many years. I haven't even told my best friend who holds me accountable. And it just went to show me, and the point he was trying to pay off was that everybody's struggling with something, even if it looks fantastic on the outside. And I wonder kind of to get your approach for someone like that, who you look at as a leader that has it all figured out, that has a full life. What your thought is he probably struggling with something too?
I actually don't. I don't think so. I mean, sure he might be dealing with like whatever small, tiny issues, but I mean, what I'm saying is that there are people out there that don't struggle with those things. Like they've actually conquered that. It's hard to believe, but we're very cynical. Like, oh, everybody's got some sort of crazy fault. Sure, like, yeah, maybe there's like internal judgments about people inside, or like, but like I've met a lot of guys, and I'm saying this guys because we're talking about like kind of a sexual type thing that you brought up, like they conquer that stuff. Like they don't have those issues, and men out there who can't believe that are the men who struggle with it, right? So I look at that and I go, he's totally. Anybody can hide, right? Anybody can hide in any context, anywhere, right? You could be the most vulnerable person around and be hiding, right, in that community. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at people that are just incredibly vulnerable, now you're not vulnerable with everybody. You want to be vulnerable with a few safe people, right?
Yeah.
I think what happens is that people that struggle with those kind of things, especially men, anybody, is that. I come from a Christian faith background. I think we just lost the fear of God, right? Like we just don't fear God, right? Because even if nobody knows your dirty little secret, if you come from faith, God knows.
Yep.
And if you don't fear God, then that it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom, right? And so you're just an idiot. That's what it is, right? You're an idiot because you don't fear God. And so. Yes, I'm not saying that everybody has no issues, and everybody does have some issues. I'm just saying is that there are actually really great men and women out there who have really got it going on. And I think that we forget that that's possible. Like we're so cynical, like that's not even possible. It's like, no, actually it really is. Like no, they're not perfect, but they're good enough to go follow my example, Yeah. I don't look at porn at night, I don't. for example, I met another guy who I look up to, and yeah, I was probably 24. It's like our first year of marriage, and I told him, I said, man, I'm really struggling with like just keeping my eyes forward, right? Like there's a beautiful girl walks by and I just like glance over at her and I just like, and not like I'll glance twice, like I struggled with that, right? And I think a lot of men have struggled with that, right?
Yeah.
And to be honest, over the last few years, as I've fallen more in love with my wife and I've had a fear of God and I've really like realized that what's that doing? It's a counterfeit. Ultimately, it's a lie, right? It's like it's a horrible offering. When I see something like that, I go like, that's not mine. That's someone else's wife or someone else's lover, right? Like that's off limits and that's not healthy for me. There's nothing good there for me. It's just bait. It's just temptation. And so I've gotten really good. I mean, like I don't struggle with it anymore. And
a perfect example of how you've personally conquered something that's probably a struggle for other men.
Yes. And the same thing, you might be struggling with lying. Man, I could never stop. No, you totally can stop. Like you are a victor, not a victim. Like we choose to do this stuff. Like you choose to look at a girl. You choose to lie. We're not a victim to it. That stuff doesn't happen to us. Like we actually choose it. So you can choose not to. It's just the self-control and the discipline required in maturity to grow up. And that's kind of the big message that I throw out there for leaders and look at men and women who have done that really well.
Yeah, and it's unbelievable. I mean, just you're the victor. Couple follow-up questions. Do you feel personal pressure because you're helping spread this message to so many professionals, young people, entrepreneurs about some of these key messages that you can't fail in these areas because you're the one preaching it?
Totally.
Does that feeling come across at all?
I mean, I think like every pastor of every church probably has the exact same feeling, right? Because they're like sitting on the pulpit talking about all these different things and like, they have to live this very clean life. And I do. One of the insurance policies that I kind of put out there is that like I'm totally not perfect and I don't intend to fall, like I don't plan to fall. I don't wake up in the morning going, you know what, today I'm going to sin. Like today I'm going to like fall, I don't do that. I start the day with, I am not going to fall to anything today. And now, sure, like there's been times where I've, yelled at my wife and we've gotten in arguments and I've been selfish and I've been, rude to other people or, and so I have these things. It doesn't change the truth though. Right. So that's my whole thing is that, a guy that is an X-ray technician for lungs, he takes care of like, your breathing apparatus in your bodies, right? He might be smoke cigarettes. It doesn't matter because the truth is he still knows that it's not good to smoke cigarettes and that doesn't change the truth, right? And so for me, I go, I'm going to preach the truth and have authority on it in terms of this is what's right. This is how we should be thinking. And if I fall, then it doesn't. I just want people to know it doesn't change the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows that
you're just human.
It just shows that I'm human, and it shows that I'm weak in certain areas. But you're right. It does. It is a lot of weight, and it does call us to be as leaders to be above reproach, like just above. Constantly be looking out for weaknesses and. What are you looking at on your phone? Like all those kind of things. Like, what are you saying on the internet? Like, I always have a rule that like I don't say anything online that I wouldn't be willing to stand on CNN and say like in front of the whole world.
Right.
And so it just protects me from saying rash things that I might say in a small group of guys that are really close to me. Right.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the men, women. We get around each other in each individual group, and you get that. Gossip going. And this is even in the workplace, right? At the workplace cooler in the kitchen. Like, you get this little gossip going, or if you're at a group with all men and like, man, this girl's so hot, or vice versa. Same thing with women.
Right?
This lady's so, gossipy, and then they're sitting there gossiping about it themselves. And it's so difficult when you're not surrounded around the right people to remove yourself from your weaknesses. Have you done things to surround yourself with the right people that not mask your weaknesses, but help build on your strengths?
I have a couple of people that I keep around me, and that they keep me around them, which I would call safe people who I've given permission to call me out at any point. And it happens probably once a month, where they're just, hey, just want to let you know, the way you said that didn't sound right, and you should know that. Or, hey, the way you were having that conversation, wasn't appropriate. Or, hey, the way, whatever it might be, right? Yeah. Just
how did those relationships happen? I mean, I think a lot of young professionals, young people really struggle with finding the right types of influences and the right people that can hold them accountable in their life, mainly because they're in that 20s range and they're not quite, they're still hanging around people that are going to the bar or whatever it may be. What are some of the things that you've done to find those people?
For me, it takes time, right? So, so people that have history with you is really good. Safety is found in history, right? It's not everybody. It's just a few people. I like to have some peers and some above, right? So I don't like to just have people that are just at my level or just above me. I like to have both. So some other guys that are in their 30s, and then other guys that are in their 50s. Mm-hmm. That kind of has a really good balance for me. I think for me, it really just comes out of I found that in church. I do home church, so I'm not like Amish or weird in any possible way. Not that Amish people are weird, but we just do regular church. It just happens to be inside of a house with a few families, and that lends itself to a really different setting for closeness, and transparency.
Relationships.
And that has changed. So I'm able to kind of follow what it says in the Bible for being close with one another and confessing your sins to one another, and just having people think that I'm wild. I'm why, Dale, oh my gosh, your stuff is so good. I love it. And I'm it's just from the book of Proverbs, or, it's just some stuff that I found in scripture that I'm just I'm saying in a bit different way. Mm-hmm. I'm millennializing it. So I've just interpreted scripture a little bit differently than I think the boring church has. And I just try to do it with honor and integrity, and hey, I always say there's some really great principles in there, whether you are a believer in Jesus or not. There's just great wisdom in there. You can write incredible business books just from some of the stuff that's in there. I mean, my business books are based off a lot of the stuff that I found in there too. So that's kind of where I lean in, and where I follow my formulas to create these really great friendships.
Yeah. Well, you just mentioned formula, and out in Oregon, you talked about the 4 pillars of success, and one, where did you've kind of explained where some of that comes from, but can you give us a little insight into the 4 pillars of success that you've defined, and what that really means to you?
Yeah, so they're 4 F's, right? So it's family, it's friendships, it's finances, and it's fitness, right? And fitness could be your mental health, your physical fitness, your spiritual fitness, but just making sure that your body and soul is taken care of, and then it's all built on the foundation of reputation. And so, for me, I just have I had a lot of just going back to that idea is that your business isn't what makes you successful. But if your finances are if I met someone that's family is just, they look great. They're all happy. They're not on their phones at dinner. They have, connection. The wife feels like she's loved and cherished, or the husband feels like he's loved and cherished as well. I'm speaking from a man's perspective, so sorry for you people that might think that I'm one-sided person here, but the kids are obedient. They're not rebellious and rambunctious and not listening to the parents, but they're obedient and looks like they just really respect their parents, and then their friendships. If I can see their friendships, that they have a lot of people that trust them and care for them and are there for them, and then their finances. They're not in any debt, maybe, but their mortgage, but they don't buy things on credit. They are open to have conversations and ask for help if they need money. They're able to be generous with people. And then they're fit. They're not like, massively overweight. They're not, they don't have a drinking problem. They don't have, an eating issues. They can't control their diet. They don't just sit behind a desk all day and never exercise at all. Because skinny people are sometimes the most unhealthy people in the world, right? So,
how hard is it how hard is it to get exercise with two kids? It's unbelievable. It's so hard.
And I don't even exercise. Like what I do is I just make sure that I have a pretty active life. I just say yes.
Outside, you're walking, just things of that nature. It amazes me how difficult it is. Because you want to be home, I know you work out of your house, but I come to the office and then you're there and then you get home. The last thing you want to do is go exercise because you want to spend time with your kids. You want to be there for them. And then you got to try to work out at 5 a.m. or 7:30, 8 o'clock p.m. And those are brutal times to work out.
Oh, it's the worst. Yeah. So I take walks and try to say, hey, let's all go for a walk. Or on Saturday, hey, let's go up to the mountains and hike. And we'll get a good hike in. And that's kind of the very basics. When you have little kids, you can't do anything really that efficiently, right?
Right.
So sure, when I'm 45 and my kids are grown and I have some older kids to help watch younger kids, sure, I'll probably start running or riding my bike again, but
yeah.
And then the last thing is reputation. It's just making sure that it's really hard to have a good reputation and be influential on the internet today because somebody hates you, if you're doing something of value, people hate you. And so I got all types of people that don't like me. And it's hard to manage that. And the thing is as long as people respect me, even if they don't like me, I'm cool with that. Now, if there's people that I've wronged in my past, I really try to make those amends. And that's something that I've been doing even recently, just really trying to reach back and say hey, I'm sorry for what I did 4 years ago, And so that's important, just to realize how important a good name is to have in today's world.
So the recap: family, friendship, finances, fitness, all built on the backbone of your reputation. It's the 4 pillars of success. So if you're out there and just think about each one of those core elements in your life and how do you measure up in those areas. And you got to be honest with yourself. The easiest person to lie to is yourself. So think about that in terms of how you're doing in those areas. And it's okay if you're great. It's okay if you're bad. There's a quote from the Chargers. It's actually a Latin quote, but I heard it from the San Diego Chargers quarterback, Phillip Rivers, and it's called Nunc Cepi. And Nunc Cepi, Dale, means today I begin. So wherever you are in those family, friendship, finances, fitness, and in your reputation, Nunc Cepi, today I begin. It's fantastic. I thought a lot of the 4 pillars.
Yeah, it's conceived overwhelming. You're like, crap. And at the event, you notice I had everybody rate their areas, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, rate your family. On a scale of 1 to 10, rate your finances. And so you can even do that exercise right now and just kind of just rate all those things, your reputation, all that stuff, and you go, okay, well, look, my family's kicking butt. That's great. Okay, finances are at a 6. Friendships are they're okay. They're at a 6, and fitness I'm at a 4. But reputation, man, I'm at a 10 there. And so you can really realize where you need to work to actually be successful, because I'll follow you all day long. You got 9s and 10s across the board. You're worth following.
That's your guy with 11 kids. He's 10s.
Yeah, he's 10s. And I'm I just look at him, I go, sure. And there might be a day where one of those things falls short. And when one of those things falls short, I go, man, it's time to earn back because you're not there yet. And that's how we should treat with people. Give them grace. Don't hate them. They fell, but hey, you could earn that back. When you get back up there, I'll start following you again. Right now, though, looks like you got some work to do, and that's okay.
Yeah.
To have that kind of space, stay by their side, but you don't have to hate on them or tear them down even further.
It's awesome. It's great advice. As someone that's hired young professionals at Sevenly, now with people at Startup Camp, you kind of, your a lot of your programs and your courses are kind of drop the job and go do your own thing at its highest level. And I'm not sure I completely am on board with that, and I'm sure you aren't exactly either. I mean, I think a lot of great people do great work in corporate America that add a lot of value to the world.
Yep.
And I sometimes even think people go overboard when they're really not ready to start a company, or they're really not, their heart's not in it. They just hate their job so much they go try to do something. What do you say to, a young professional today that is struggling with, do I go get experience at an organization like Sevenly, or do I go start something now? Or do I go to college even? Or do I start something now? What advice do you give there?
Okay, so for me, don't go to college. That's my advice. I just don't believe that college is a viable option, because I think that CEOs and managers today are not hiring based off of your degree. They're hiring based off of your portfolio, your personality, and your experience. And so do whatever you can do to build those things up. Sure, there's the rarities, the exceptions, the doctors, the lawyers, the different people, right? Sure. But I'm talking in business. Mm-hmm. And I never hired anybody off of their degree. The only thing that a degree told me is that, okay, cool, they're not entrepreneurs, right? So I would hire them just because I knew they wouldn't start their own business and leave me. So like right. But we got to realize not everybody's an entrepreneur. That's just pure and simple. Mm-hmm. We need supporters. So every entrepreneur needs a group of supporters. Like they need to be the number 2s, the number 3s, and down. We need those people. And we've glorified entrepreneurship so much that it's like, I don't want to be a number 5 guy, but it's like, no, it's actually okay if you learn and you go, I am content with the fact that I work really well with the team and I don't work really well as an entrepreneur. I love working for someone else. That is totally okay, because without those people, no entrepreneur can make anything.
You can't build anything great alone. I mean, you just can't. It's
impossible. You just can't. Yeah. So that's one thing I say is just be okay with that. Learn to be content with that. If you are, you might also be like a side hustle entrepreneur, right? Where you have like a full-time job plus like a really kick butt Etsy store that like does like $4,000 a month on the side, right? And or has like a really good blog, and so you can be these people that have the side thing, or you're a freelance consultant on extra hours on the weekends. Like that happens all the time too. And then there's the full-blown entrepreneur that like was the corporate person that says like, I think I want to try this out. Like I got enough money in savings and I really want to just kind of float my own business. And if it doesn't work, then I'll come back to my career. And for the side hustle people, for the full-blown entrepreneur people, I say education is not like college is bad. Education isn't. So like, that's why I started Startup Camp, right? It's a year-long course on how to start a business. You launch at like month 5. It's $99 a month. So it's $1,200 compared to like, $40,000 for business school, right? And it's incredibly practical. And it walks you right through the very basic steps of what it takes to like get your business planning and your business licenses and like get your trademarks in place and do branding and understand marketing and what a launch strategy is and all those basic things. You need to know that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of where I really, I think, help people. And in the very beginning, I'm like making sure they understand, are you actually an entrepreneur? Because if you're not, like it's time to go. If you are, then let's move on, And so helping people realize who they are and being content with that.
Yeah, it's interesting that the perspective of someone that teaches people how to be entrepreneurs, and you can honestly say that everyone's not supposed to be an entrepreneur. I mean, in a lot of ways, people would be like, "That's not a good marketing plan," but I think it's honest. I think it's real,
yep.
And I applaud people that aren't entrepreneurs finding a path to add value to their organization and the world in different ways, and doing it in the right ways. So I think it's really good advice. Well, let's end on some fun stuff. You mentioned you have 2 kids. What's harder, leading at work or leading at home?
Oh, leading at home's way harder for me. I mean, it takes emotion. Right. Leading at work is a little bit easier because it's like just kind of get the right things done, finish the to-do list, like say please and thank you, make sure people feel loved. But at home, it's like, loving my wife is an art, right? So it's like I got to make sure that she really feels cared for by her love language, like not like, she doesn't need a gift. Like she wants time with me. She wants me to go have fun with her. And that's like, it's really difficult to like make sure. So like, for example, this last week, I told my wife, she said, "Hey babe, we just need to go have more fun." I said, "Okay." Well, I scheduled 5 weeks in a row of a babysitter in the morning for us to go do things during the day. And like, we're going to go like bow hunting, like not bow hunting, but like bow and arrow practicing, like, right. Like, and we're going to go, hold hands and walk around, the river, and like things that like, we did when we were single or, together with no kids. Right. So like, and I'm trying to bring that back. So I'm really fighting for that stuff right now. And then like, loving kids, I feel like is easier than loving a spouse too. 'Cause kids are just naturally just lovable, and you're like, "Oh, come here. I love you. Let me spend time with you." But making sure that my kids feel, safe and, structured. I think they need to feel like there's boundaries. And that means disciplining kids in terms of just making sure that they know that, hey, you can't do that. You need to listen to daddy the first time. Like a lot of those kind of things that I think are really important to development in a child in those formative years. So it's not like the fun side, but it's important. And so I'm constantly trying to analyze where I'm at on those fronts, and enjoying them at the same time.
Yeah, they're such a joy. I mean, there's nothing better I spend my time with. I have a good friend, Dale, who told me something. I've written about it. I tell people, new parents all the time, kids spell love Time, right? I mean,
yeah.
There's no other answer for how kids spell love. Like you're either there or you're not there, and.
Yep.
And that's hard when you're working and you're trying to provide, and you also have to spend time with your wife. But kids know one language, right? Your wife can understand that you have these things going on, but you might need to find time. In my case, if I don't take out the trash without being asked, like I'm a hero if I do that, right? That's just how my wife spells her love language. But it's such an important point here that, and I know you say this all the time, and I'll let you say it, but it's essentially you can't lead at work if you can't lead at home, right?
Yep.
And so it's just a beautiful point. And my favorite question to ask on the podcast, Dale, is if you can have dinner with any 3 leaders, living or dead, who would they be?
John Adams. I'd love to sit with him. I think he's like the most critical piece of American history.
Okay, hold on. Wait, you can't go any further yet. John Adams. I watched this HBO documentary on John Adams.
Oh, it's so good.
It's like the best show I've ever seen.
Yeah, and it's based off of the book John Adams by David McCullough.
Right. That's like 2,000 pages. I mean,
and I've totally read it. It's like the longest book I've ever read. It's like next to the Bible. It's like, wow, that's a thick book. John Adams is like a cornerstone piece to, like, he's the one that appointed George Washington to like lead the revolution and to be the first president. He's the one that asked Thomas Jefferson to write the Declaration of Independence, right? He's the one like that brought everything together, that fought really hard for freedom. Like he is the inventor of America. And it's so weird how he's like not talked about in school. Like it's Jefferson, Franklin, in Washington, even though like, and they just kind of skip over John Adams. It's so weird to me. But he's like a pinnacle piece to success. He's also like an incredible family man. He had some struggling years for sure. Yeah. But he, one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that Abigail, his wife, who's like, I want to name like my next daughter's middle name, Abigail, awesome. Because she's just so amazing. But she would be like, he's so stubborn. He takes so long because he just refused to ride his horse on the Sabbath. And so like he would literally like he wouldn't work on Sundays. Yeah. So he would literally stop and just sit under a tree and read. He was addicted to reading and learning and leading. And so anyways, I just love,
and his son, Quincy Adams, John Quincy Adams. I mean, he has defined leadership for me. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. I mean, I use that everywhere, almost in every article I write. I mean, I'm mildly obsessed with the Adams family.
Okay, so now check this out. Now, John Quincy Adams is the only president that ever went back into Congress, right? So he's the only person that's ever done that, right? So he went back and like he was like I think he was a House of Representatives, right? And that's like never happens, right? And he got a chance to send down the message that his father taught him about slavery and just the because him and John and Abigail were so anti-slavery, it was insane, right? They were just like the very beginning of just the anti-slavery movement, and handed that down to John Quincy Adams. And he fought really hard. There's actually a really good movie about it. I forgot the name of it. About John Quincy Adams. It's actually got like Matthew McConaughey in it and like just big name actors. And anyways, when he made friends with another young man that eventually was actually a pallbearer in John Quincy Adams' funeral. And he handed down that journey to this young man. And guess who that young man was?
Now I'm on the edge of my seat.
Abraham Lincoln.
No kidding.
Yeah, so like you just see the line go from the Adams down to Lincoln, and it was just so the next person, boom, Abraham Lincoln, right? I would love to spend some time. He seemed like me in many ways, anxious, kind of doesn't sleep real well. Always had just very good with his words. Honesty was a priority because he naturally struggled with it.
Mm-hmm. I can't believe how many times he failed, and continued to pursue. I mean, he lost like 7 elections in a row, and then the first election he won was the presidency. It's a crazy story.
Crazy story, and so that would be he was just great, and then probably the Apostle Peter. Anybody that's willing to get crucified upside down and burned alive for somebody else, I think is just worth talking to.
Upon this rock, I will build my church.
Yeah, exactly. Peter just seemed like his personality as, again, like flawed and beautiful at the same time. I think that he's relatable, and at least what his writings and what I've read about him. Just those 3 men that I just spend. And hopefully when I met John Adams, that Abigail would be there just to have a conversation too.
Because I feel like that's who you really want to talk to. Okay.
Right? It's just like, gosh, the letters that she would write are amazing.
Well, that's awesome. How can people learn more about you? How can they get a hold of you, or learn more about what you're doing? I certainly want to mention the first book, People Over Profit, and then the new book you have coming out, Startup Camp. Yep. But anything, how can people learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so startupcamp.com is my blog. It's also my podcast. It's also where I do like everything. So all my writings and stuff happen there. Instagram is kind of like my main spot to kind of really journal in public and share lessons, what I call daily wisdom, kind of the pun on my name, Dale, right? So I share these kind of lessons 5 times a week on Instagram and photos of my family. And that's just at Dale Partridge. And those go on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. Those are the kind of the mainstays. I'm not on Snapchat right now. I have my name reserved. I've done like 1 snap. I'm just kind of mostly focusing right now on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and email. So that's kind of my main things right now. But so just startupcamp.com and new books coming out in a year. So it's got a little bit of time. It's crazy how long it takes to write a book, but working hard to really help people chase their dreams.
Well, awesome, Dale. Thank you so much for all that you're doing to help young professionals and just people in general. I think it's awesome stuff that you're doing. We appreciate you being on the show, so look forward to following your work and sending people to the right places.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks, Dale. I hope you enjoyed another episode of the Follow My Lead podcast. It's a real honor and pleasure to bring you stories and best practices to help you perform better at work and at home. You can continue to educate yourself at learnloft.com. There's free resource section, as well as old podcast episodes, blogs, and even a free trial of our Getting Leadership Ready program, as well as our High Performance Leadership program to help you perform better at work. Until next time, remember, you don't need permission to lead.